You're watching PTV.
PTV Live Holiday Edition is brought to you by our patrons. Kristin Kohs at the Sanctuary in Pleasant Hill, California. Gene G. Jr. Christi Turner. CandyMom 15. On the Porch with Todd and Ken. Matt and Tyler. Bay Area Doors. Chili Willy's Smokehouse Barbecue. Let's Celebrate TV. And the Orlando Guy.
You're watching PTV Live Holiday Edition. Starring Arnie De Herrera, Doug Silva, Ben De Herrera, and Sherry Ketzel. Featuring all your favorite Christmas crafts with Sherry, holiday drink recipes, and holiday home decorating tips from the boys, holiday shopping, and so much more. It's time now for PTV Live.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to a PTV special presentation of Holiday Edition. I'm Arnie.
I'm Doug.
I'm Ben.
I'm Sherry.
Tonight, we are very honored to have with us a very special guest. He's a TV movie director all the way from Canada. We love having him on our show. Please, everyone, I'd like to welcome Nicholas Humphries, or Nick.
Hey! Oh, we made him really huge.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. Nick, great to have you with us. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having. It's so nice. I always like being on your guys' show, so thanks for having me back.
I think this is thrice.
I think this is the third time.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. Because the first time was with Michael.
Yes.
Yes.
We did another one coming out.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
The other one was we had you for when you had just finished Mystery Island.
Oh God, that's a good movie.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Oh God, I was like, we've already watched it a couple of times. I'm like, that's a really good one. I would tell you if it was, but that one was top notch. So we have good friends, another good friends, and people that are big Hallmark they do movie reviews. John and Daniela, they're in outside the Toronto area, so they're kind of in the same country, but not in the same area.
That's them.
So different times.
Good people.
For those of you that are in the chat tonight, if you would like to ask a question of Nick, please start your question in the chat with Q and a colon. That way it can grab my attention, and we'll be able to give that question to Nick and see if he can answer it.
What about a Santa hat in the question? Yes. He has a Santa hat. If it's a Santa hat, a whole bunch of Santa hats, and then the question, then I'll see Santa hats. Yeah. I won't see Q. So it has to have a Santa hat emojicons.
Yes.
Emojicons.
Yeah, apparently Doug is blind.
Oh, I can't.
He didn't
Hello.
So let's see, Ben, Sherry, let's go ahead and start with you. What kind of questions do you have?
Ben, you said you're prepared.
I never said that.
You said, I have questions.
I said, Arnie, please have questions.
Is that what you said?
That's what I said.
Okay. So, Nick, how long have you been a director?
I've been a director I think I directed my first short film about 18 years ago. I think it was 2000.
You were so young.
In grade school?
I think.
Yeah,
we should 2000. That.
Yeah.
So is that your first director where it went to TV, or that's when you first directed anything?
First time I directed anything, I think I was 12 years old, directing little movies on a VHS camcorder. But I think the first short film that I did that went to festivals was 2006. And then about 5 years after that, I directed my first feature, which was this horror movie. It was a slasher murder mystery cabin in the woods thing. And a couple more after that. Like I did like a dark fantasy. I did a horror movie set in space that got a theatrical release in North America, which was really exciting. And then I kind of like, I don't know, like every one of those indie movies were so hard to make. Like it would probably, from start to finish was 5 years of my life really on each of those projects. And it just felt like kind of an unsustainable thing to do. Like it was kind of, and then the pandemic hit and everything slowed down, and then it opened up again, and there was this big demand for streaming content and broadcast content because everybody was at home watching stuff. So I got my opportunity for TV movies in 2021, and it's just been sailing after that. Like I think I've done 14, 15 of them in the last 4 years. Different genres. Like I've done I get the rom-coms and the thrillers for Lifetime, and then done a horror movie for Tubi, mysteries for Hallmark, and then 3 Christmas movies this year. So
Yeah, you got the Christmas
Fantastic.
movies. I see some questions. Let's do Let's Celebrate TV first.
Did Nick go to film school or homegrown
Homegrown.
into the industry?
yeah, I kind of went. I started making movies before I went to film school, and I didn't go to like a traditional film school. I went back to school to do my master's in film production after I'd already directed a bunch of short films. So I did get some tools there, when it comes to working with larger crews, because I was pretty much self-taught doing short films, but on bigger things, I needed to understand what everybody else did so that I could communicate with those departments. And I got that from doing my master's thesis. So I spent 2 years doing that. And then, but I didn't, I taught at a film school. I taught at Vancouver Film School for 17 years.
Oh, wow.
So I really had to learn the curriculum in order to teach it. I actually had to design the curriculum for the directors if they specialized in that department. So I learned a lot doing that as well. That was kind of really my film school, was teaching it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay,
well,
okay,
we
we
have-
have
we have
more
another
from
one.
John and Daniela.
This is John and Daniela, hit or miss Hallmark movie reviews. I'm curious about directors' creative flexibility with visual language in Hallmark movies. How much room is there to experiment with framing, camera movement, etc.?
That's a really good question. Hallmark specifically has a very clear brand. And so there's this
Yes.
sandbox that you have to play in.
Yes.
But
It's like Mad Libs. You have to make sure you check mark everything, or they'll just hiss it and have a major conniption fit.
yeah, and it's, when it comes to sort of stylistic choices, I would never, attempt a handheld cinematography in a Hallmark movie. Whereas in a different, venue, sometimes you can use a handheld aesthetic to raise tension and create a sense of immediacy. That's not part of their brand. So there's certain things you can and can't do, but everything that you do inside that sandbox really comes down to the director's sensibilities. You're working very closely with the creative executive at all times. So they'll tell you no or yes. But there is room to play, but then of course time becomes an issue as well, right? Time dictates a lot of what we do on TV movie sets, because sometimes you're doing anything between 11 and 15 days, which for a 90-minute movie is it can be pretty intense, right? Depending on the scene count, because every time there's and characters, because every character needs, a setup. Every scene needs a new set of setups. So, it can be like a race against time from start to finish.
And you've done how many Hallmark movies, or not quite yet?
So I've done 2 for Hallmark Mystery.
Okay, the movie, the mystery.
Yeah, and then I've done stuff for Lifetime and Tubi, and then I've done a ton of acquisitions. So what those are movies that sort of get made in advance, and then they sell them to the streamers. Oh, one of my movies I did this year was a Up TV original. So Up TV developed it and hired me to direct it. So that was a straight to the network one, which meant we got like 13 days of shooting, which was awesome.
Now, during those 13 days, how many hours a day are you physically on set?
So it's usually a 12-hour shoot day, and then you get anywhere between a 30-minute and a 1-hour lunch. And then I always arrive at least half an hour before call time because I am a anxious person and I need to like get the set and sort of like acclimatize to being there before I have to be in front of all these people telling them what's going to happen. So yeah, I would say that's like 13 hours. The other issue though, with shooting in Vancouver, and this isn't true in places like Kelowna or Winnipeg, but in Vancouver, our locations, like I live in Burnaby, but a lot of the time we're shooting out in like Langley or Maple Ridge. So you have to add an hour of travel time to and from set.
Oh, wow.
15-hour day, depending on, the time that you're arriving and leaving.
So it not only saves costs for the production, but you're able to stay at home when those films are on location where you live.
Yeah. So if there's like, and I haven't gotten a ton of Vancouver shows. Like the last one I did this year for Up TV, North by North Pole of Dallas Mystery, that one was a Vancouver show, and it was such a nice change of pace because I've been sort of all over. Like I was in the 2 I shot earlier this year were in Kelowna, which is about 5 hours north of Vancouver. So I was living in a hotel for almost 3 months doing those 2 movies. Wow. And then before that, I was in Panama for Mystery Island. Before that, I was in for Lifelong Love. So a lot of the shows that I do are not in Vancouver anymore. But those are kind of nice because you're sort of like living the movie, and then you don't have any responsibilities outside of prep and shooting. Like someone's making your bed for you every day. You need something like, you need food or something. There's always someone that's like willing to like, they're running checks from the office to set. They'll pick you up, whatever you need, like a jug of milk or whatever for the hotel room.
You can be really bossy. It's like, I want pizza with so much cheese.
I mean, I always try to be very sweet about it, but yeah, exactly. People will bring you whatever you want, which is amazing. I often forget how to feed myself after a movie because people drop it in your lap. They're like, here's your lunch, right? And then I get off and I'm like at home, I'm like, where's food? How do I...
That's my life. That is my life story.
Yeah. Okay, we have, I don't think it's Oprah, but let's say.
Harpo. We have a question here. Oprah. How many days do the year do you spend working versus not working? What's work-life balance like?
Great question. It really varies. I've had busy years and I've had slow years. So like, with the 3 Christmas movies I did this year, let's say average 12 days of shooting. So that's 36 days of shooting plus 2 weeks of prep for all of those, for each of those. And then usually about a week of post. So 15, bad at math. Is that 15 weeks a year?
I don't do math.
Something like that. Count. Now, when you mentioned post-production, how involved are you with the final production of a film?
So what ends up happening on a lot of these, because there's like these tight turnarounds, to get them sort of through the entire process. Because like editing the picture together is just sort of the first step. You have to lock picture, then it goes into sound and color, and it has to have like quality control checks, and they have to cut trailers. So the turnaround's pretty quick. But what I end up doing is the editor will put together a cut that is like an assembly of all the scenes. It's usually quite long. And then I've had anywhere from 3 days to 5 days to work with the editor to put together a director's cut. And then they'll send the director's cut to the producers, and they can implement their notes, and then it goes to the network, and then they do their cut of the movie. So it goes this whole kind of process, but like my commitment can be as short as 3 days.
Oh, wow.
all digital now. Like I think it was a lifelong love. I did post on that movie from beside a pool in Mexico.
Rough, Nick.
Nice.
I planned it that way because, like, I had spent winter in Winnipeg shooting that movie, and I was like, I need to do this somewhere warm. Like, if I'm having to zoom in with an LA editor, anyways, I could do that at home, or I could get a little with a swim out, pool and put my legs in it and just have my laptop.
Very good point. Very good point.
Oh yeah, so much changed now.
With the production where you are the director and you have seen the script, you're given about 2 hours of material, and then you have to trim it down?
Yeah, so they're usually developing these things to be a little bit longer than they need to be. What we need to do is deliver a 90-minute movie with commercial breaks, so like a 2-hour sort of segment. And then the scripts just tend to be longer. Like there's often scenes that, can stay or go. Sometimes, there'll be like multiple romances or like character storylines going that have extra scenes that if they need to be shaved down, they can. So they tend to be quite long. And the assemblies that I get from the editors are usually about 2 hours. So that my task in those 3 to 5 days is shaving off anywhere from 15 minutes to like a full half hour. Really depends. But I usually know by the time I get in that room which scenes I'm going to propose go. And then it really depends whether or not the network is in love with those scenes and want to keep them and find another way to shave that time.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
That explains it all when I see movies.
Yeah, because sometimes
I'm like,
it feels like there's a hole, something's missing from the storyline. And so it could be that it was just part of the edit that happened and it wasn't really caught until the full production is actually being shown.
Ben's studious. He has his hands up like you
When you're shooting a film, how often do you shoot the end scene towards the beginning of the shoot schedule what is the balance of looking at the script and deciding which scenes to shoot when?
So it usually is based on your locations, right? So it's like, let's say we have 5 locations in the movie. Most of the time, they're only going to be available one of our shoot days. So it's like, okay, we have these 12 days, and the house is going to go, on a Tuesday. So sometimes the finale takes place at the house, and we try. I think the assistant director does all the scheduling in working with the director as well, but it really comes down to logistics. So I've done a couple of movies where I have shot the final scene first. It happens a lot, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because then we know, okay, so this energy, this emotion that we've reached in this final scene that we've established, the rest of the shoot is building towards that. So it sets up like a post to kind of reach. It really comes down to logistics. I would love to one day at the time. I don't think there is a world where you would ever shoot chronologically unless you're doing a oneer. But it would just be such a luxury to be able to like build up towards the ending. I think for the actors too, it'd be really nice. But the actors are all professionals. They do extensive script analysis to make sure that we're hitting the emotional notes where we can. But
yeah. Great. Okay, one more. We have a question here from Let's Celebrate TV. What trades in production are you closest to? For me, when I get to be on set as an observer, I love watching the sound department guys.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think as a director, my closest contacts will be all the heads of department, right? So, and that's just how to make the communication flow as efficiently as possible. So, like, if I have a note about something in the camera department, I will talk to my director of photography and they will distribute that information to their team. Same with the production design department. If there's like, a tree that needs to get moved into the shot, which is not the case in Christmas movies, I'll talk to the set decorator and they'll kind of like, get their team together and make those things happen. My first assistant director, that relationship is very important. You want to be able to get along with your first assistant director. And then there's an entire assistant directing team that they also kind of coordinate. and then I'll have a direct line to the producers. And then sometimes on these shows, particularly in the acquisitions, you'll have a creative producer on set that will be the direct line to either the network or somebody at the company that's responsible for developing the thing. And so if I need to get approval on things to change, I'll go through that creative producer, and then they'll kind of reach out and work on communicating that while I'm finishing a scene. So it's just focusing on the heads of the department. I try and talk to everybody, because when I first started out, I was a production assistant emptying cigarette butt cans on Stargate. So like, I know what it's like. Level position, and you can feel kind of invisible sometimes. So it's like, I try to make an effort to like learn everybody's names and say hello, and I don't want anyone on set to feel like I'm sort of like untouchable as the director.
Yeah, prima donna.
Yeah, because I think that like, communicating, but also like building relationships with everybody on the team also ensures that like they're going to do their best work for you, right? If I'm treating people like they don't matter because they're lower on the hierarchy, or if I'm like a screamer or something like that, people are going to avoid me, and they're just going to do what they have to make their day. So yeah,
that could affect the movie, because you're like, this guy's a real what. I'm just gonna like, he's gonna have to just deal with it if this looks crappy.
So apparently the Orlando guy is still waiting for his invitation to
Yes.
be your personal PA. So
on the list. I unfortunately don't hire the PAs, but I'll slide your name in with the production manager.
Okay.
yeah,
what
well,
else
I know
do you-
for me, I'm waiting to be the set designer for Christmas. So
Oh, in the kitchen has a question. There's still no Santa hats. People are not following directions.
what do you like most about directing, and what is the hardest part of your job?
Oh, what I like most about directing is being creative. Just makes me happy. Like if I get to like make stuff, I feel like that's like a day on this planet that was worth, living. I've always been creative. I think, when I started, I love drawing, I love writing, like I love doing all those things, but I also love people. So the nice thing about directing is that in film in general, it's such a collaborative medium. So getting a bunch of people together who are experts of their craft to collaborate on something, it's like you get to like make this baby together, and it's really, really rewarding. I think that the hardest part of the job is just the uncertainty, because you never know where your next gig is coming from or when, and so I'm still like, for years I was teaching and directing at the same time, so I always had that teaching paycheck. And then when I started doing TV movies, I was getting like 4 or 5 movies a year. I couldn't teach anymore. But every time one would end, I'd get through post, and then I'd feel the anxiety start to build up of like, am I getting a gig? Am I going to be able to pay my mortgage? Like, is this like, was this a terrible mistake? Like, what have I done? But I'm still getting used to that. I think a lot of people who do freelance are very used to that feeling and find ways to manage it. I'm still getting used to it, because I've only been a freelancer for a year and a half, and it's been a very tumultuous time in the film industry during that time, because we had the Hollywood strikes, and then all these things were being realigned at the networks after that. So it's been slow. I think both in Los Angeles and in Vancouver, and everybody's kind of anxiety. So that's the hardest part, but I'm feeling really positive about 2025. In Vancouver and British Columbia, Canada, our tax credit is going up 8% next year.
Wow.
It's going to make us a pretty attractive place to shoot. So I anticipate, it might not get back up to post-pandemic levels of production, but I think there's going to be just more opportunities to get work.
Wonderful. Now, you did mention a couple weeks ago we were supposed to have you on the show, but you had to postpone because of a special event that you went to in Southern California. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I'm a member of the Directors Guild of Canada, and they've been doing some really amazing work. Aside from collecting our dues and providing us with benefits, our benefits are like really nice. Like I go for a massage every 2 weeks, and I'm about to go get some glasses, and like it's a good benefits package. But they've also been organizing all of these sort of events that help us directors kind of like get out there and meet producers and be seen, and also like communicate with each other and form a community, because it's kind of an isolating position being a director. So getting to meet other people that are, floating around in the same ocean has been really nice. So the LA thing was part of something called Screen BC Week, where Screen BC is this organization in British Columbia that sort of facilitates a bunch of film related stuff. And every year they do this week in Los Angeles where they go down and they meet with the networks and studios and politicians are involved. And
Wow.
So the Directors Guild brought a bunch of us down. We had to apply. And then I think there was 12 delegates of BC directors that got to go down and attend all of the events and go to the parties and meet everybody that was there. But they also organize these things called Meet Your Match events, where you send through your resume and your bio and your demo reel, and then different producers can decide to meet with you. So when I went down, I had a bunch of meetings with some like really cool producers in Los Angeles, and then went to like this awesome party where like all the studio heads were and network heads and our Minister of Finance and I think our Minister of Arts and Culture came down to the party and gave a good talk. That's where I found out about the tax credit thing. So that was eventful and a tax write-off from me.
We have a technical question.
Oh.
When filming outside, how are mics used to capture the dialogue? Are mics overhead? Do you boom it or are the mics on the people or what?
It's I'm not a sound guy, but as far as I know, it's usually a combination of their lavalier mics, which are on them somewhere, and then a boom as well, right? So the boom's kind of getting their voices and ambient noise, and then the lav mics are picking up very clean versions of their dialogue. Although sometimes like costumes can kind of get in the way of the lav mics, like they scratch up against them and cause noise. So it really provides us with a backup having both. And then failing that, if it's still usable sound, then when we get into post and it's all cut together, then we send them into ADR and they dub over. Which, in Christmas movies, if you're using like a snow machine, you're pretty much guaranteed that you have to do ADR because they're quite loud. So the audio would be like... Yeah.
I mean, they don't have snow on demand. You could just tell, put snow.
Ben and I and my husband watched Snowy with a Chance of Christmas last night.
Oh.
Absolutely loved it. But I'm a big fan of
Andrea Brooks?
Yeah. Andrea, because I'm a huge When Calls the Heart fan.
She's a Hardy.
Yeah, I'm a Hardy. So,
I've never seen the show.
But I have to tell you, whoever did the music was incredible because they had me totally at one point where they were, Arnie, have you seen the movie yet?
Yes, we did watch it last night.
Did you hear the portion playing in the bleak midwinter?
Yeah.
I was just blown away by that. It's like, whoa, my favorite carol. I'm going, and you could hear it just enough to know what it was. And I don't know that everybody knew what it was, but it was a sweet movie. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I love Andrea's so much. We've done 3 movies together now. We missed a year. I think we missed 2023. But so far, every year we've been able to do a movie together. And I love her so much because, she just in the frame, doesn't matter what she's saying. Yeah, I believe it. And, she creates the world just in her performance, and she's just a joy to work with. Like she's just like, as a human being, is just one of my favorite person to go to battle with to try and get one of these things made, because she's a team player, and she's sweet, and she secretly has kind of like a dark sense of humor. I just really enjoy making movies with Andrea. So much that one of the things that I've been doing during the slow periods is I also love horror movies, and so I've been writing this horror
I
script.
know you do.
And
Not
I
my
wrote
cup of
a
tea.
part that I want. I kind of wrote it with Andrea in mind. I don't know if it gets made, if she'll be able to do it. But I think it would be a cute part for her.
Well, I tell you,
Now, when did you make that movie? When did you make that movie?
Snowy with a Chance of Christmas.
Yeah.
So that one and A Sprinkle of Christmas, Snowy with a Chance of Christmas is on
Prime. We saw it on Amazon Prime. We saw it on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, so it's on Prime. It's on Stan in Australia, and tomorrow it comes out on Peacock, I believe. That and A Sprinkle of Christmas were both shot in March and April of this year. So they were shot back to back. So what I did is I went up to Kelowna, and we prepped both of those movies at the same time. And then we had this little window where we could go up to Big White, which is a ski hill just outside of Kelowna. And they still had snow, but the ski hill had just closed. So it closed on one day. We arrived the next day, and we shot all of the snowy exteriors for A Sprinkle of Christmas and Snowy with a Chance of Christmas. Then we went back down to Kelowna, and we shot all of our interiors of A Sprinkle of Christmas, and then rolled into the remaining stuff from Snowy with a Chance of Christmas. So it was like I had two movies in my head at the same time. And the biggest challenge, I think the first 4 days went really smoothly. Then we shot Sprinkle of Christmas, and I had that movie entirely in my head at that point. And then we had a weekend, and then we started shooting the next movie. I hadn't thought about that movie in 3 weeks because we were shooting the other movie. So I had to get back into the zone of Snowy with a Chance of Christmas, because I'd been focusing on an entire other show for 11 days, whatever it was. So it was wild, but I think that's the model for a lot of these acquisition shows are now doing, is there's shorter timelines, they're block shooting them. And it's kind of like directing a TV show. Like if you as I understand it, I haven't directed episodic yet, but I think you get a block of 2 episodes as a director that you'll shoot at the same time, and then there'll be 2 separate episodes in the end. I think that's how things are working, and that's so but it was an interesting challenge, and I'm glad that I had done it, because I think I'll be better prepared for more complicated situations going forward, having done that.
Now, were these the same movie?
The actor was amazing too. I'm usually not fond of child actors in movies because I don't like their roles, but his role was substantial, and it was really cool the way he pulled it off.
Yeah, and to be honest, I was a little worried at first, because that role, usually, our leads will come from Vancouver, Toronto, sometimes LA, and then all of the rest of the parts have to be cast locally. And because we were shooting in Kelowna, I had shot a movie in Kelowna before, and I knew that the acting pool was quite strong up there. But with a child part, it's such a particular thing, because you want that kid that's going to come across as a real child that's not going to be irritating.
Yeah.
And so I was worried, because I was like, well, what is also the age is sort of, you always get these scripts with these super young child characters, but the younger they are, the less time you get to have them on set. Right. And it becomes really prohibitive when you're racing against time to get a movie shot. You can't lose a child when you're in the middle of a scene. So usually 12 and above is sort of the sweet spot. And so he just did a really good job. I was also worried because originally it was written for a younger character. He just made it all work, and he reframed some lines of dialogue in ways that sounded natural for a kid his age. But but he was just a really sweet kid. Like I enjoyed working with him a lot. He was talking a lot about how he wanted to be a director one day. So like in between takes, I was giving him little like directing tips and things because I've taught it for so long. So I was like, okay, class is in session.
That's cute that he would be near.
So
Michelle gets a gold star because she paid attention.
who handles continuity between shots? And do you have a favorite actor or actress?
Oh, well, I'll get myself into trouble if I answer that second question.
Yeah, that was
Yes.
evil. That one.
It depends on the movie, right?
It really does. Like I have a troupe of actors that I love working with, and it really depends on the part. But yeah, I have many. What was the first question? Oh, continuity. Okay, so yeah,
Continuity between shots.
I mean,
Who
the truth is,
handles?
I always say that it's everybody's job, but the last sort of line of defense is the script supervisor who is sitting at the monitor with me and going through and making sure that, okay, the actor took a sip of their drink on that line. On the last take, you're probably going to want it in this piece of coverage so that it cuts. But I think it's everybody's responsibility. I think it's my responsibility. I think everybody should be watching out for it because it's a lot for one human being to do, and script supervisors are magic. I could not do that job, and I'm always very impressed about the things that they catch, but they're just sitting there with the script and a pen and whatever software they're using to track stuff and like watching that frame, and it's a very particular skill set. I have a lot of respect for script supervisors because it's a hard job, and you can't kind of like disassociate ever, which like on a 12-hour shoot when it's cold or like, you know, there's a lot of reasons why you might just like drift off. They don't get an opportunity to do that.
Yeah, right. So Richard, the Orlando guy, is asking you to describe a film where you discovered the audio was subpar and had to dub.
Oh. I mean, it happens in every movie, and often it's like, you know, sometimes it's
thinking of
the
that.
location, you know, is just like too close, because often with like these lower budget, like TV movies generally are lower budget than cinematic films, and so, you know, if we're shooting on the street, we don't get to shut down the street for production, so there's cars going by, there's usually like people walking through the shots. We put these little like sandwich boards up that says like active filming. If you enter this space, you consent to being on film. Airplanes are often a problem. On the last movie I did for Dallas for Santa, it was this magic thing because we got access to this place called Martini Town here in Vancouver in Lang. It's a full kind of like city studio backlot set. So we had full control over that. We actually had to like have someone driving around in my car just to make sure that it looked like there was vehicles in this place. So that turned out, I think, you know, for sound, that was probably a pretty easy one to put through post. But then one of our other locations, which like, and this is entirely my fault, but we needed to find this like this old brick building. It's supposed to be like an old newspaper printing building that's been kind of closed for, you know, the better part of a century. And there really was nothing like that in the area that we were shooting. We had to find something that was near our other location, just for logistics. And we were basically out in farm country, and there just nothing like that existed. We ended up finding this beautiful hydro station that was like, I think it like powered trains, but like with electricity. So anyway, it's out of commission. It's like an empty space now. I think the second floor is an art gallery at this point, but otherwise it's like this castle looking building in the middle of farm country. And I had been there like multiple times, and I did notice that there was a train track right outside, but it looked kind of overgrown. And I was like, I'm sure it's not being used anymore. There's a lot of train tracks in this area that, you know, don't get used anymore. And we've been there multiple times, never saw a train go by. And then the day we were shooting, it felt like they were going by like every 10 days.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
So, Jim, Mr. More Sunshine, please.
Can we get some more sunshine, please?
He says, not to put Mr. Humphries on the spot, but if he were able to get the PTV crew a spot as extras in his next movie, I think it was Manifest World Peace. I think I heard that somewhere.
No, we would just make it very, very, very Christmassy.
Yeah.
Like,
So the logistics of that are even extras are part of a union, and they're in the actors union in Vancouver. So
Yeah.
they have this rule that I think, and I'm not a production manager, so I might get this wrong, but I believe the first 15 extras on any given day have to be union background. And then beyond that, you can bring in whoever. So it would have to be like a party scene or a Christmas parade or something with like a big head count. So I'm not saying it's impossible. It's flying.
Damn.
Yeah, and then there's logistics of flying 4 adults up to Canada.
That's
Yeah. True. No problem. This is true.
Passport.
Yeah, and I don't have a passport either.
Oh,
That would have to be solved. We'd have to solve
easy.
that.
Okay, our fabulous people in
John and Daniela, what's your approach to rehearsals on Hallmark films? With the quick turnaround times, do you get rehearsal periods with the actors?
so the answer to that is no. We don't get rehearsal in advance. But one of the things that I try and do in advance, if I'm working with an actor for the first time, I will spend the days leading up to the shoot. And sometimes it takes a while to coordinate everybody and actually get the time to at least Zoom, maybe have a coffee, just to get to know each other and talk about expectations and, discuss the character and stuff like that, so that at least we're not arriving on set on day one having to hit the ground running without ever having met each other before. And most of these actors know the drill. They've been in similar movies. They know what's expected of them. But I want everyone to enjoy themselves while doing it. And I feel like if you have a personal connection in advance, that just goes a long way. What ends up, we do get rehearsals for camera, so we'll block the scene, and that's usually the first time we actually get to put it on its feet. And that's to kind of show the camera team and everybody else what the actors are going to be doing and where they're going to be moving, so that we can set up for those shots. And when they come back, we get the shot set up, takes 30 minutes, whatever, an hour. We bring the actors back in, and they're in full costume and makeup at that point, and then we do a rehearsal for camera. And so it's for camera, but it's also for the actors, and that's basically how much rehearsal we get. And then we just have to shoot because time is never on our side. As soon as you
yeah, you kind of not to say the quality shows when you see these things get done in 11 days or 15 days. You can tell they're just cranking this stuff out. It's just, we're cranking it out.
Yeah, I mean, in order to, I don't know, I won't pretend to know what the network's workload is, right? But it's they've got to fill however many hours of content. Now the expectations for a lot of these networks is they're going to release a movie a day in December. Yeah. That's just their Christmas content. So aside from everything else, all these other originals they have to pump out, they also are going to need, let's say, 30 Christmas movies. Getting those things developed to the point where they're ready to shoot and then sending them out, that's got to be crazy. And then when we get them, because budgets are lower, they could be anywhere between just under $1 million to $3 million, depending. If it's a network original, they tend to skew higher. But often with the acquisitions that I do, they're 900,000 to 1.2 million. So that really only allows you 11 to 13 days of shooting. And I'm finding more and more budgets are shrinking, and it's more of the 11-day shoots. And when you're shooting an inflated script that's 110 pages, there's no time to second guess yourself. You got to prep it really well and make sure that you have a good plan and that everything is organized and scheduled in an efficient way. And then just get in there, shoot, 2 takes, per setup. Like, and also like blocking becomes really important because it has to be dynamic enough that it's not going to be boring to look at, but also it has to be efficient enough that you can actually cover it in 30 minutes. We don't get a lot of time to shoot those. So it's a particular skill, and you don't get to be precious about a lot of things, but I love it. Like I love the intensity of it and how fast it's moving and watching the machine of everybody kind of come together to get something made. Like my most thrilling days on set are when we have 30 minutes left for our day and an entire scene unshot and nobody thinks we're going to get it. And we all band together and make it happen. That's what I feel like I've driven home when I've done some directing, because I've guided this team of people to do something that's like kind of impossible with the time and limitations that we've been given. I thrive on it. I think it's fun. It's never boring.
That's cool. There's always an ongoing quote we always hear, and we always do an invisible cheers is, and I'm sure you even say that, you got this. That that is a very typical quote. We always laugh when we up. They put it in. We need to have that quote. You got this.
Now you mentioned the term setup. What exactly is involved in a setup, and how many do you do per scene?
Yeah, so a setup is any time you move the camera. People often confuse setups and shots, but a setup is anytime you're moving the camera and tweaking the lighting. You can get multiple shots from one setup. So let's say I'm doing an over-the-shoulder shot and then a clean close-up. Sometimes I can achieve that without moving anything, just swap it to a tighter lens and shift the other actor out of the way a little bit. So that's 2 shots in one setup. But a setup takes time, right? Because you're moving the camera, you're moving the lighting, and it really depends. I would say at the minimum, in a 2-person scene, you need 3 setups because you need a master, you need coverage on both sides. So, and each of those setups can take anywhere between 15 minutes. Depends if you're turning around. So I tend to be able to get a master shot of the 2 of them and 1 piece of coverage without too much of a hassle. But as soon as you come around to the other side and start looking at the other person, the lights have to swing around. Usually that back side of the room that you weren't looking at a minute ago needs to be dressed because it's full of camera equipment and so it's a lot of kind of shifting around in the space. But what I'll often do is, we've probably scheduled multiple scenes to take place in the same room. I'll do my master, I'll do this piece of coverage, we'll do this piece of coverage, and then we'll block the next scene, and I'll start with this piece of coverage because we ended looking over here, so we'll start looking over there before we start making our way around the room again. It just reduces the amount of flipping back and forth that you get to do.
Because there's a lot of flipping back. You have to fill each one of those because the dialogue, and you make sure you see the back of the head of one, you see the other person talking. So
here's another question from Let's Celebrate TV. What was the most amount of takes for a particular scene? I was on a production that did 26 takes.
Yeah. So I've I did a space horror movie back in 2018, and the opening shot of the movie, which I don't think ever made it into the movie, if I'm was this woman wakes up on a spaceship and on an alien spaceship and doesn't know where she is. And I wanted to create a sense of weightlessness because we're in space. And so the shot starts upside down, and then as she's waking up, it slowly spins. We needed a special camera head to make this happen. It slowly spins to right side up, and then she becomes fully awake and realizes where she is. And it was this shot that I'd always kind of envisioned, since I had read the script. But this piece of equipment when they were using, it wasn't a perfect, the way that it sat, on the head of the camera was sitting on this head that had a pivot point that wasn't dead center. And so every time we did it, it was kind of veering off to one side, and we would readjust, and we would do it again, and we would readjust. And that one, I think, usually, I think we did maybe about 26 takes of that.
Because it was more of a
shot. And that was a 30-something day shoot, so we had a little bit more time to kind of get things right.
Because that's a visual, the eye camera, because the camera doesn't see what the eye sees. So you can see it rotate, but that camera doesn't get it. So it looks like it's all cattywampus. It looks like a weeble wobble. It's
Yeah,
kind of wobbling around.
and the frame is a rectangle, and I was trying to
Yes.
create this like circular kind of spinning shot. So like basically her nose had to stay in the center of frame the entire time as it kind of spun. So it was a difficult shot. It was more difficult than I anticipated. But then, like sometimes on an 11-day shoot, it's like we got one take because we've got 15 minutes to the end of the day and we have 2 more setups, and you don't get overtime. Like if you go into overtime, it costs thousands and thousands of dollars, even if you go a few minutes into overtime. So it's, and then you just pray that it works out. It's one of those scenes that can, maybe wind up on the cutting room floor if it's not perfect. But luckily, the teams that make these movies, like this is their bread and butter. They do these things like throughout the year. So the crews that I've worked with, like everywhere, it doesn't matter in the world where I've done it, know how to do this well, broadcast quality and quickly. And then of course the cast just nails it every time. I don't think I've ever worked with an actor that wasn't like 200% prepared going into one of these scenes that we didn't even get to rehearse until they were on set.
Oh, so wow.
Everybody is just, the level of professionalism in the TV movie space makes it possible.
Okay. So Donna is asking, do you prefer to shoot a movie on a soundstage or on location? And which one's easier?
Oh, a soundstage. Shooting on a set, and I don't often have that luxury. Like I did with North by North Pole, a Dallas Mystery, because we were on the back lot, which was amazing. But yeah, if you're at a location, often we're shooting in houses, which are built for people to live in, but like shooting a movie in a house with all the gear and lighting and everything, it's just, they're very tight to move around in and you get slowed down. Anything out in public, you're dealing with traffic noise and people who like to just walk right into your shot and be like, oh, you guys making a movie? Like, there's a lot of challenges, although, I won't complain about location shooting because I do get to shoot in some pretty amazing places. Like when we went down to Panama, we were shooting in the actual jungle and it was very uncomfortable. There was bugs everywhere and it was hot. It just was a cool thing. It was like, feel like, tell 12-year-old me that, you're going to be shooting a movie in the jungle in 30 years and I wouldn't believe you, but I get to do this job. So
I wouldn't be in the jungle without Agent Orange. I'd be spraying everything down. I'm like, there's no way. Another Santa hat.
Yeah, Harpo's asking, how often when I'm seeing the back of someone's head is it actually that actor?
Yeah.
Not always.
Yeah.
Most of the time, yes. But I don't think I've ever shot with a body double, like a stand-in on a TV movie. I definitely did it when I was in the indie world where, someone wasn't ready and we just had to go. And so we just like bring in the stand-in or, but I don't, I think often sometimes you just need like the sleeve of a coat to be dressed into the shot. Although I think there are union rules about that. So I don't think it's something that I can just easily do because I think as soon as you do that, it's like a pay upgrade for that person.
Yeah.
So okay, because they had to mimic something.
All right. Now, about the films, the 3 films that you did this year for Christmas, which was your favorite to do?
Oh, I mean, I'm going to get myself into trouble if I answer that question as well. But
did they all have good parts about them?
They all had good parts about them. Yeah. With the first 2, I loved being Kelowna. I loved working with actors that I've worked with before. Okay. The new actors that I was working with were amazing. And because that was a location shoot, we all just kind of went to winter camp together and we all bonded. Something really special about that. And then getting to shoot in the real snow, that was awesome too. But then, Dallas for Santa, which I got to do in August, just working with like some of the nicest producers that I've ever worked with in my entire life. Like there's this triptych of producers that I worked with that are just so supportive and lovely, and they were just such a joy to work with. I loved shooting on the back lot. I loved having 13 days to shoot that movie. It felt luxurious. And so, yeah, they all had special things about them. So it would be tough. It'd be tough to pick. Yeah.
Okay. Very diplomatic. That's
Okay,
perfect.
so the movie that we actually watched last night, Snowy with a Chance of Christmas. What would you say is your favorite moments during that film that you remember?
Oh, I would say anything with Andrea at the news station.
Oh yeah. She was
Because that
sickly happy and bubbly when she was always on. And you don't know if she was just overly acting that part, but she was at the green screen and she's talking about snow and the weather and everything, and it's like, okay, that's sickly sweet, like cloyingly sweet. I was getting cavities. My eyes
yeah,
were giving cavities. It was so sweet.
I mean
Oh,
that's the character, right? Like, and but I also love just, I mean, working with Andrea is great, but also we shot at an actual news station in Kelowna, and it was kind of cool because like I grew up watching global news and like the anchor at the news desk, and that desk was there, and I got to sit there and like just be like, this is wild, being in an actual news station, and that we didn't have to fake it with like a green curtain in an office space somewhere. So like kudos to our locations gentlemen on that one. But also I loved everything that we shot up at Big White, particularly like there's a shot of Andrea walking through the snow, and then she stops and gets her phone out and records this thing for social media, and it's just like, what a beautiful place and shot, and Andrea looked gorgeous, and it just was like, I don't know, like a really pretty moment. I loved that moment being up there.
It felt very snowy when they were outside doing the mountain things, and the lighting was actually really good. So I did get kudos to that part where I'm like, that's like real snow. That's real winterly looking out the middle
That
of
was good.
nowhere.
That was good because you always get the blankets of cotton
Ugh.
in some of the movies.
I
Yeah,
liked
like,
all her jewelry.
Hmm?
I loved all her Christmas jewelry, all her pins.
yes.
I'm a collector of Christmas brooches, and I loved them.
We put a lot of thought. Patrick, our production designer, I think, was the one that was like hunting for the Christmas brooch, the Santa brooch that she gets, and we looked at like probably about 1,000 different things, trying to make sure that it was like just the right one. And so he found one, and we were able to alter it. But yeah, a lot of thought went into those pieces.
So there's a question here about, does audio post pick the background music, or do you get some input?
No, what generally happens is I'll put in like temp music with the editor just to give the producers and the network like a sense of the vibe that I was thinking of. But then that, I mean, at least in TV movies, if I'm doing like a theatrical movie, I'd be heavily involved in the composition. But with TV movies, it kind of gets done afterwards. So it's a nice surprise that I get to experience when it gets broadcast and I see the final thing for the first time.
Now, the last time that we interviewed you, you mentioned that halfway through, I forget which film it was that you were doing, but you said that halfway through, you actually saw like the first half of the film already assembled, and they gave you like a partial edit of the film. Were you experiencing that with these same productions?
Not with these ones, because we were going so. I mean, I don't know. I don't think it was in the budget to have an editor cutting an assembly that they could send out to me every day. I don't think any of the three that this year I did. I would get dailies and I would get the footage and I could watch that back and be like, oh, okay, this is what I actually got. This is going to cut. But sometimes it is like, like every day we'll get a new cut of what's been shot and we can see, if we got what we needed. So it sometimes happens, but I think it depends on the budget and also the bandwidth of the editor. Like does the editor have an assistant? Do they have multiple assistants? Are they doing it all themselves? I did for North by North Pole get to see a couple of sequences cut together. Like there's a couple little, not action sequences, but things that are just like a little bit more complicated than, people talking in rooms, basically. And so they were able to cut those together for me and show me that, they worked, which was nice. But not a full assembly until I think probably a week after the movie is done. Then I sit down and get to watch.
Okay. Well, Snowy with a Chance of Christmas is running on Amazon Prime right now. Sprinkle of Christmas is going to be running on Peacock.
It's already available on Roku, and then they're both going to be on Peacock on December 10th, so tomorrow.
Okay.
Great. And then North by North Pole, a Dialis Mystery. That premieres when?
December 22nd on Up TV. It's a sequel to Dial S for Santa, which was out last year and directed by my buddy David Strasser. And David Strasser was supposed to direct the sequel, but he was, I think, executive producing a Hallmark movie and he couldn't do it. So he sent my name into the producers and got me a job in August, which I'm grateful for. And then his partner wrote the script, and both of them were students of mine at the Vancouver Film School. So it was like family.
How incestuous.
Yeah, very networking.
Yeah, it really comes down to who you know. But yeah, it's closing out the Christmas season for Up TV, and it's one of these rare things for us Canadians where like we don't usually get to see these things at the same time as the US does. Usually the US release happens and then we get it a couple weeks later. North by North Pole is launching on Up TV and W Network in Canada, and I think Plex, all on December 22nd at 7 p.m. And then it's having some re-screenings on Up TV on Christmas Day, I believe.
Good. Well, I know I'll be setting my DVR for sure because I want to see that one.
So that's the streaming. Wow.
Are there any final questions?
I don't know. This is just, it's very, I love this kind of stuff. There's just,
It's always fun.
It's fun to find out this behind things.
I think I have one more question. Nick, what is next in the pipeline for you?
If you could share.
Yeah, so I don't know what my next directing gig is going to be. Usually for the last like 3-4 years, I've gotten a call on March 13th. That's like usually it's like spring hits, things kick into high gear, and then it's like, Nick, drop everything and go to this remote location for a month. But in the meantime, I'm writing. I wrote a little horror movie that I'm really excited about, so I'm kind of sending that out to producers and seeing, what the avenues might be about getting it made. Don't necessarily need to direct it. I would like to direct it, but I also just would like to kind of like branch out into some other creative areas. I read a lot of scripts, so I feel like I can structure one well. And yeah, so I don't know, I'm excited about it. We'll see what happens there, but more TV movies in the meantime.
Oh yeah. Okay. I mean, do you think with one more thing, do you think with the streaming and with just the internet in general, there's just a lot more opportunities to get that they're trying to create content for to put it out on these festivals, to put it out on streaming, to put it out on networks? Do you think they're trying to just crank out content?
I think that was true, especially directly after the pandemic when everybody was at home streaming things. I think the numbers were super high. And so a lot of people were creating a lot more content. Now those numbers have kind of shifted because the world has sort of, gotten back to normal more or less. And so it'll be interesting to see. But I think, the studios and the networks have had the better part of a year to kind of recalibrate and look at what they're doing and assess their budgets and things like that. So my hope is that 2025 is going to be a busier year. I imagine budgets are going to continue to be squeezed, unfortunately, but luckily I'm good at doing movies in a short amount of time with no money. So I'm the guy to get hired under the new system. But it'll be interesting to see. I mean, it's impossible to predict.
Doggy. No. There is one more question here. It's from Mike Wheeler. He says, when is he going to write a script about Pepper Tree Villa? Actually, Mike, I'll be honest with you. I will be talking with Nick about Sherry's love story and Tom about the how they met in Hawaii, the whole bit. So I will be talking with you about that, Nick, and giving you some ideas about that.
We have talked about that before, and I think it's an amazing story for a romance, a destination romance.
I do think that there's some opportunities there for a story. So, Nick, I'd like to thank you. Our whole audience has been very appreciative of your time. So thank you. Everyone is saying thank you.
Are you willing for people to follow you on socials? So where are you?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram under Nicholas Humphries. I'm on Blue Sky now. I started a Blue Sky account, which I think is nicholashumphrys.bluesky, something like that. Instagram, you'll get sort of like what's going on in my personal life plus professional. Blue Sky is almost like mostly just movie stuff. So
okay, cool.
Because you have to put out what you want to put out, kind of, just to keep people following you, and it's also you're doing work that. Oh, I want to watch those next movies because you keep that up too. So that's wonderful.
I'll tell you, I'm really looking forward to seeing North by North Pole. So
we'll have to find the other one.
Sprinkle.
No, the other one before this one.
A Sprinkle of Christmas.
No, North by North Pole. There's another one before that one.
Yeah, the Dialist Mystery. Yeah,
I have to find that one. So.
Oh yeah. I think it's everywhere, and they're also gonna if you've got Up TV, they're gonna show it right before North by North Pole. So they'll show the one and the sequel back to back.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's what we want to hear.
Well, everyone has been very thankful for your time now.
Chatty people, thank you. We want to honor everybody's time.
But Nick, thank you again for taking the time to talk with us, and I'd love to have you on again sometime next year.
Yes.
Love that. Thank you guys for having me back. And anytime I got something to talk about, I love hanging out with the gang.
It really does show because you are a teacher and you have this passion, and it definitely shows that you really like what you do and you love this industry.
And we're thankful that
you want to share with
you share that with us. So,
people like us.
So everyone, thank you so much. We will be back with a regular episode of PTV Live Holiday Edition next Monday night at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. But this special presentation was awesome. A lot of fun. Thanks, Nick.
Share with all your friends. This is wonderful.
And we'll see you all next week. Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Good night.
PTV Live Holiday Edition has been brought to you by our patrons. Kristin Kohs at the Sanctuary in Pleasant Hill, California. Gene G. Jr., Christi Turner, CandyMom 15, On the Porch with Todd and Ken, Matt and Tyler, Bay Area Doors, Chili Willy's Smokehouse Barbecue, Let's Celebrate TV, and The Orlando Guy.